a good dream or a good story, I think both, should be helping us to identify what it is that we like and to be able to embody and bring it into the world. Hello and welcome to the Stoner Story Witch. My name is Kristyn, and I am so grateful to be hosting this podcast on the lands of the Chorotega people, colonially known as Costa Rica. Today's episode is the second episode in my Dream Place season of the podcast. My last episode, I talked a little bit about kind of the personal connection and a little bit of the memento mori behind this meditation that I do for my children before bed that is called the Dream Place. And it is a practice that I have picked up from my teacher and mentor, Carmen Spaniola, in the Numinous Network, and that I've just implemented in my home. Today's episode is relating it to an actual story. Of course, we're the Stoner Story Witch podcast. So the story for today is The Dream Productions, which is a mockumentary series put out by Disney Pixar. It is in the world of Inside Out, and it takes place in between Inside Out and Inside Out 2. In this episode, I will be giving a little bit of a synopsis of that series so that, if you haven't watched it, you can maybe still kind of understand the gist of the connection to an actual story and how that story might kind of be informing a little bit of the upcoming episodes. And then I talk a little bit more about the actual Dream Place meditation that I will be diving into more in my next couple episodes. And this is a conversation that I had with my husband, Kevin. I felt like I did not want to just talk into a microphone by myself. I wanted to have a conversation with someone, and he very graciously accepted my invitation to come on and just kind of actually have a conversation with me. So it felt really nice having that with him. And then, so after I talk about the synopsis and a little bit of a connection to the actual Dream Place, I actually asked him what his experience is of me having led him through very similar trance journeys, hypnosis, meditations, whatever you want to call it, an intentional altered state of consciousness. And so we have that as well. And I hope you enjoy. As always, any connections or comments you want to make, I'm always happy to receive them at stonerstorywitch@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you. And without any further ado, here is my conversation with Kevin about dream productions and altered states of consciousness. All right, well, welcome again, Kevin. Thank you for coming onto the show to help me have this be more of a conversation and less of just a monologue. It always feels nice having someone that I can kind of talk to.
I'm happy to be here. I'm into you and I'm into dreams, so it doesn't feel like work to me.
Okay.
It feels like fun.
Awesome. So for today's episode, I want to talk about the story that I'm kind of basing this little season off of, which is a story that our kids got us into that we just watched this weekend, actually, to kind of remind ourselves of what it was all about. So I want to talk about the story itself, and then I want to segue a little bit into how it's going to fit into this larger Dream Place meditation that I've done for our kids at bedtime on and off now for over a year. Yeah, so I'll just say that Dream Productions is a mockumentary story that takes place between the events of Inside Out and Inside Out 2. And in general, I really do love the symbolism of Inside Out, the emotional components, the little people in our heads that have different needs. And ultimately, even sadness belongs, right? Even the hard emotions we need to let ourselves feel. I felt really seen by this show. The premise of this particular Dream Productions is that the main character, Riley, is at the threshold of puberty. And the story also follows along this Hollywood in Riley's head that is actually referred to as Dream Productions. So it's this collection of artists and creatives that are responsible for resourcing Riley in these altered states of consciousness. And there's like this really high budget for the nighttime dreams, and like there's this funny, like the daydreams are like kind of more indie films. So I just want to say that there's really two different levels that this show presents at. There's we're kind of following along this like, real life young girl that's living in San Francisco with her mom and dad. And she's trying to figure out what she wants to wear to the dance, or if she even wants to go to the dance with her friends. And then there's also, throughout the day, this team of creatives in her brain that are trying to craft these dreams for her. So clearly there's a connection between dream and story, that it's like, okay, we want to create a visual story that's going to happen in her dream to try to resource her in some way. So for the synopsis here, in the dream place, we follow in particular one director named Paula. She's been the lead director of Riley's night dreams since she was 2 years old, where in one of the dreams that she directed, it's called like Bye Bye Passy. Like she actually convinced Riley that she didn't need a pacifier anymore. And they say that, the dreams that actually can cause the dreamer to change their action in the real world are like the best ones, right? And there's also this theme of, a dream is no good if Riley can't remember it. It's kind of the belief system.
They even have like a symbol of like a golden orb, whereas like the dream that changed seemed really good in some way, right?
Yeah. They kind of have like these trophies. Like when a dream is successful and Riley remembers it, it's the color of joy. Because one of her, like core emotions is like yellow. So it's this like glowing yellow orb that's like, wow, not only does Riley remember it, but then it's also just like hailed as like, wow, like it literally like changed Riley. So, and if we think about it, that like Riley is in this dream place, it's like Riley is this larger context that the world is taking place in. Like it's one thing that I really, really liked about this show, and I guess I'll just jump into one bit of the symbolism, is that like to the dream productions, Riley is, like some common goal, some aligned value that this community of creatives there's always this like, like we need to know what's best for Riley. We need to know what Riley wants. We need to know what Riley needs. There's this idea of what are stories for? They're meant to be like changing the world, right? And so like this story actually had an impact on the world because their world, Riley, like let go of her pacifier, And then likewise, the relationship of Dream Place to Riley is this idea of, I would say, this competent protector, which I can go into more, but it's just this idea that that there are beings that, just like love you unconditionally, want what's best for you. And so I can look at this story in one of two ways of being like, okay, if I'm relating to the characters that are in the dream productions, I can think of as a creator, as a writer, what is like the big why? What is like what are the changes that I'm trying to bring into the world? What does collective liberation look like? What's my Riley? And then I can also think, okay, from myself, what is resourcing me spiritually? Who are the little people in my brain or my little spirit guides or my competent protectors that are going to resource me to be the confident person and wear the dress that I want to wear to the dance or decide whether I even want to go to the dance.
And I hope this doesn't derail you too much or cut me off, but in the synopsis, part of what happens is Paula gets kind of derailed from the unifying mission of what's best for Riley and what does Riley need. And it's like she's kind of thinking that as she continues to try to direct these, award-winning dreams, but then she also gets kind of lost by I feel like, putting herself before Riley or something like that.
Yeah. Actually, thank you for bringing that up, because I also wanted to say, so there's this Paula who has been like the lead director of Riley's dreams ever since she was 2 years old, but she can like only think in terms of what like 2-year-old Riley liked. You know, like there's
her old hits,
right? The old classics. And she has an assistant director, Janelle, and Janelle is a little bit more hip, a little bit more understanding that like, hey, like I know you think that Riley really loves, there's this character that like is based off of one of Riley's favorite toys called Rainbow Unicorn. It's like this little toy. And we actually see a scene in Riley's real life where she finds this unicorn toy. She brings it to school because she's like, oh, this is kind of cool. But then it like falls out of her backpack and the kids are like making fun of her. Like, oh my gosh, that's like a little kid toy. You still like little kid things? And so like Riley is like, you know, feeling embarrassed and is like, and then we see her like throwing it in the garbage. And then, you know, there's this whole thing where Paula still insists that like Rainbow Unicorn is a hit. We need to start. Rainbow Unicorn needs to star in all of Riley's dreams. And then Janelle is like, actually, I don't think so. I don't actually know that Riley, I don't think that that's going to have the same like zhuzh that we're looking for. And so I kind of feel like Janelle represents like, you know, just like being open to the changing nature of where Riley is versus kind of this like being stuck in the past that Paula represents. And that also certainly they have a boss. So like the head, like the CEO of, you know, this Dream Productions is Jean, and she is definitely, to me, is a symbol similar to like in my series on my first season on Little Women, there was Mr. Dashwood, who ultimately was like, no, like the protagonist needs to get married in the end. And like in Hades Town, there's, you know, Hades, who ultimately gets to decide like the terms of Orpheus and Eurydice returning to the world. And then even in Severance, you know, there's that like Lumen is dishing out propaganda. We see that scene where Natalie is talking to Rickon and being like, you need to rewrite your book so that it'll be more palatable for the innies. And so it's like it's just funny to me that in all the stories that I'm like taking the time to do a podcast on, there is very much like a personification of this concept that like what capitalism wants us to want. And Jean also talks about that like Riley's not remembering her dreams. So, and she's been waking up in the middle of the night. So like she's identifying that there's like all of these problems that need to be fixed with Riley, as opposed to maybe just like being curious about like the larger picture. Jean is telling the directors that they need to all tap into what preteens like, because, you know, Riley is becoming a preteen, and so there's this whole, you know, like what is it that teens like, as opposed to just like what is it that Riley actually needs? What does Riley like? And so and yet I think we see from the directors throughout that there really is this desire to figure out what it is that Riley actually needs.
But you brought in capitalism, and then one of the things the director also does is instill this spirit of competition, because she says to Paula, well, there's only going to be room for one director. We've got too many directors here, because the assistant director goes on the up and up, and she ends up like getting her own department or whatever. And so then Paula's feeling the pressure of competition. And so then there's the part where the assistant director, who then gets to be directing her own, has a great idea. Introducing the Canadian boy, I'll die for Riley.
Yes. But she ends up getting a new assistant director from the Daydream department, and he's like super creative. They go to this like cafe maturity to try to like get inspired. And the two things that they really see there are that they meet Riley's ideal like teenage version of herself is like a barista there. So like Riley has been starting to like think about like who does she want to be. She's like envisioning like who does she want to step into, who does she want to become as she grows up. And then there's also, and I think we see that even in Inside Out, the first movie, that there is this like, imaginary boyfriend, which is actually really funny. Zenny makes a really great comment when they're like, oh gosh, it's imaginary boyfriend. And he says, imaginary is offensive because it denies its existence. And I just want to put a pin in that phrase, because I was just like, fuck yes. This is, as we get into the actual dream place meditation in the next couple episodes, I just really want us to remember that, like, to just question our idea of like, just because we're thinking about it, just because we have a dream, like doesn't necessarily mean that it's not real. Right? Like, I think I've definitely been conditioned in, capitalism, patriarchy, white supremacy, colonialism, that like, and, just like scientism, right? Like, what can be proven and what can be repeatable is the only thing that's real, but that there's actually like, I want to proceed as though that the world is a much more magical and mysterious place, that things can be real and also only be accessed in like liminal states of consciousness.
I think that's very interesting. If you imagine something and then your imagination makes you feel a sensation in your body,
mm-hmm.
that sensation is real, isn't it?
Right.
So then doesn't the imagined thing also exist by virtue of your feeling?
Exactly. We also see, so there is this,
I wanted to just finish my thought about the capitalism and the pressure of her getting, because then there's the dream with the boy that is a smash hit, because Riley's imagining, thinking about going to the dance with him or whatever, but then Paula runs with that idea and goes way overboard.
Right.
And has tons of boys. She's like, oh, this is what you're saying about the boss. What do teens like? What do preteens like? Whatever. And then Paula's like, ooh, we have a formula. And then she just pounds the formula to death. And it actually freaks Riley out. And it's only because of the pressure from the CEO that Paula feels desperate to keep her job, and she's starting to just try to do anything she can to like, and so and
feeling threatened by this up and coming, so like, yes, there's definitely this like competition that's bred from this like scarcity. There's not room for both of us. So let's just, they just manufacture like a million different versions of Canadian boyfriends, which, being married to my Canadian husband, also just had some really extra funny little like Canada jokes.
It sure did, didn't it, eh?
Yes. But 100% that it's just like, okay, that isn't actually what Riley wants, but like these old stories are just getting like shoved down our throats, right? Which is just another, like this idea that like maybe we need some better stories, right? That Riley deserves better dreams. So maybe the takeaway is that, we need better stories. Okay, so we still have in the story of just still a little bit of the synopsis and some of the symbolism. We see that, okay, there's this question of like, there's this school dance, and like Riley like thinks she wants to go, but then there's this question of what's she going to wear, and her mom is excited and is like, oh my gosh, I found my old dress, and it's like back in style, but it's like not actually back in style, and so like she's like kind of trying to convince Riley to wear it, but of course Riley doesn't want to hurt her mom's feelings. And so there's this whole like, what I really liked about this series too is that it really is showing how hard it is for this like stage of human development that is like individuating and becoming your own person, and like still wanting to belong in your family, but also really wanting to be who you are, true to yourself, and belonging in, like the social group. And so there's this like, I want to be who I am and assert that, and also still belong. And so there's this whole like, there's like this theme in her dreams of like, is she going to wear that dress, or is she going to wear the dress that is what like her friends are wearing? Because like there's a particular blue dress that the friends are wearing. So there's kind of this like, do they wear this or do they wear this? And like those are kind of like the two options that we see in the dreams. So there's this big symbolism of which dress is Riley going to wear. But and that theme of, kind of like growing up, or this like, helicopter parenting, I think is also echoed in Dream Place, because we see it in Janelle, who was Paula's assistant director. And, Paula really wants to have Janelle back. She doesn't want, Janelle kind of got promoted. And so she goes onto the set in one of the dreams that Janelle is trying to produce. And she ends up kind of, Janelle is kind of floundering a little bit. And Paula's like, "Ooh, I'll save you. Like I'll come in and I'll just kind of like help tell everybody, because she has more experience directing the team." And then Janelle ultimately stands up to Paula and just says like, "Hey, like, I know it's messy, but it needs to be my mess." Right. And that is a level of, like that individuation, like, I'm not your assistant director anymore. And like, I'm not asking you to come save me. So we see a little bit of that, almost kind of helicopter parenting, or I think I've even heard people call it like a lawnmower parenting. I'm just going to mow down all the things that are hard so that your life will be easy. And I thought that was kind of cool, that it was that theme of kind of like growing up and growing into yourself and into your self-expression was actually echoed kind of on both trajectories of this particular story. And then Janelle directs a dream that involves Riley imagining herself in a great dress, and it ends up being so good that she actually convinces her mom to say that she refuses to wear her old dress to the dance, and that it was this whole, like, it felt super, I love seeing that it's like she was brave enough to have a really big conversation with her mom, and it's just like, "Mom, I don't want to wear your dress." And her mom is just like, "Okay." And it was like, I don't know, that resonated for me of, and I think just as a parent too, like remembering that, like when our kids are asking us for things, that it's like, it might feel like, okay, yeah, of course. Like, of course you don't have to do it the way that I want it to be, but like just how hard it can feel, because,
I feel it with you sometimes. If I have a request to make that I'm worried about how you might react to my request, then I have to like really bolster some courage to get through the threshold and actually ask. Yeah,
no, that's actually a really good point. It's not just a parent figure that you're trying to like individuate from or make requests of. It can literally be anyone. And I think, but like maybe the mechanism is still the same, that it's still an adolescent part that's like, "Oh, I'm scared. What happens if?" And like building up that confidence. Then there continues to be more themes of capitalism. Like there's still ultimately like, we need to be getting Riley to remember her dreams. The Canadian boyfriends start coming in, and the head of the studio, like kind of like that, Dashwood or capitalism personified, brings out like they don't call it the Nielsen ratings, but it's basically this idea. It's like live
ratings monitor.
A live ratings monitor, so that like literally as the dream is unfolding, they can see like whether, it has good ratings or not. And so at this point, they're not even creating this. They're like writing the story as they go, and they're like just using the ratings to inform it. And that is like the dream that actually totally ends up crashing and burning. Riley ends up sleepwalking and almost falls down a flight of stairs. And Paula gets in big time trouble. She keeps she keeps being demoted from like, an office to like a broom closet to a bathroom to a like her office, so again, like the symbolism of like she is on thin ice and losing belonging.
And again, the bad dream happened only after the ratings meter comes in, which is the thing that's supposed to help and actually makes things worse.
Yeah. And then anyway, and then Paula actually, because she has, this is like not my best synopsis, but it's the best I can do. And I can hopefully link in the show notes if somebody really wants to just like read through the actual synopsis. But this head director who lost, her assistant director, who's kind of her competition, but then she gets this new assistant director who's this like Zenny, the edgy guy who is, super creative, a big visionary from the daydream department. Paula ultimately throws Zenny under the bus for that dream where Riley almost walked down the stairs, and that resulted in Zenny being fired. And so now Zenny is really pissed. And so he writes a new script that's going to be absolute terrible. Like it is an absolute nightmare for Riley, but he just wants to get even at Paula. The scripts are locked, which again, there's like symbolism there that for this, like this next dream is so important. So all the scripts are being locked. And so all the directors just get their script and that's just what they need to direct. And Zenny switches out the script that Paula was supposed to do with this like terrible one that he wrote. And Paula reads it and she's just like, this is terrible. Like this is going to ruin Riley. And she has enough integrity to be like, fuck it. I'm not going to do this. I will not direct this. I will quit my job. Like the writing's been on the wall anyway. So she ends up quitting. And we see, like Zenny kind of like going back. He's like just working at a sandwich shop and he's like, yeah, that script is terrible. Ha ha ha. And, his coworker's like, yeah, that sounds really bad. But doesn't it also mean that that's going to be bad for Riley? And it's like as if Zenny like didn't even realize like, oh my gosh, not only am I going to destroy Paula's career, I'm going to destroy Riley. And like, oh no, like, again, they have this shared value of Riley, this it's like everybody deep down wants what's best for Riley in Dream Productions. And so then he like, runs off and he runs back to Dream Productions and he realizes that Paula has quit. And she's like, and then Paula's like, well, I quit. So they handed off the script to Janelle. And so then they're like, okay, like you need to go tell the head of the studio what you did, Zenny, and I need to go tell Janelle that she needs to not do this dream. But the head of the studio sees this dream and is like, ooh, this is edgy. This is drama. This is what teens like. And they're like, no, this isn't what teens like. This is going to absolutely destroy Riley. I mean, it was just an absolutely mortifying dream that he had written where she just gets like laughed at like repeatedly by like everybody who matters to her. And, but then they all get fired and the head of the studio is like, fine, I'll just direct the dream. How hard can it be? And then they, they come back in and they end up like trying to say Riley is actually now having the dream and it is turning into a nightmare. And, we learn at some point that there's a reality distortion filter on the camera that helps that helps Riley to see that whatever is being recorded is actually comes across as real. So she's like, it's like what helps her.
They're in a studio and in the Dream Productions studio and they have like a mannequin with a dress on.
Right.
But then with the reality distortion filter, Riley sees it as a person or her or whatever.
Yes. That it's like somebody can be dressed up like her best friend that isn't actually her best friend. But then with the reality distortion filter, it like her best friend comes to life and it sounds like them and talks like them or anyway. So yes. So then like finally this like Deus ex machina, like the thing that saves it is like, oh my gosh, this is a terrible dream. This is a terrible nightmare. And the one thing that Paula decides to do is to rip off the reality distortion filter. So then it's this like, oh shit, like what's about to happen? And we realize in that moment that without the reality distortion filter, Riley's having a lucid dream. And so rather than there being this like camera that is like the Riley camera that's like from Riley's point of view that has the reality distortion filter, Riley is actually there. She's in the dream and she can like literally have a conversation with Paula, with Janelle, with, she can dance with Rainbow Unicorn in her dream, and all the Canadian boyfriends. Yeah. So Riley sees that it's a dream. And Riley and Paula sit down and Riley is like, what does this dream mean? Does this mean that I like should go to the dance or shouldn't I? And Paula's like, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that it's your dream. And then Riley's like, and then you just kind of see that there's this like, the setting is like the school gym or whatever. And it's just like all these characters from Dream Productions and Riley. And she's looking around and she's like, yeah, it is my dream. And so then she is like, then let's dance. So then like they have music, and she is wearing a dress that's not what her friends are wearing, and it's not what her mom is wearing, but like a different, like a more unique, like skirt with leggings and a little jean jacket type thing, I think. Like, so it's like her own unique style, and she wants to dance with everybody. She wants everybody to dance with her teenage self and Rainbow Unicorn. And I fucking loved the bit where like to me, it's this idea, like this integration, and like Rev Angel, in like the collective process pillar of liberation, talks about like, you need to go get yourself, like you need to go get your people, and your people being like all the little parts of you. And so it's like, go get that part of you that really, really liked, Tamagotchis as a kid or whatever. And like, be like, hey, like, I really like my Tamagotchi. I'm not embarrassed to admit it or whatever. And then also, like reconcile that with like this future self that you want to be, like this idealized teenager that you want to step into in Riley's case. And like that they all just like,
they all belong.
And they all like, there was no drama. It was just like, what we see, like that the head of the studio is like, oh, like, I guess drama isn't what, right? Like, I guess Riley just wants peace. I guess Riley just wants ease. I guess Riley just wants everyone to get along. I guess, Riley just wants to dance. Riley just wants to have fun. Riley just wants to have everybody's basic human needs met, and so and then she wakes up and she doesn't remember the dream. And they say, what matters isn't necessarily that you remember, but it's like, it's the feeling that it gives you. And then we see that, even though she doesn't remember the dream, we see that she does end up going to the dance, dressed the way that she was dressed in her lucid dream. And it's a stereotypical middle school dance in the real world that she's going to, where like there's music playing and nobody's dancing. But she and her best friends like plan out a little choreographed dance and like start doing it together. And then like they basically break the ice. So then everybody else then joins in. So it's like, even though she forgot the dreams are still resourcing her for this like liberated world that she did choose. In her dream, she chose, I just want to dance. I just want to do this. And even though she didn't remember it, she was still able to embody it in the real world. And like, that's what a good dream does. That's like what a good story should be, to like help us figure out what we like and like be able to embody it enough that we can like live it out in our own world. That's my thesis statement here.
Say it again.
That like a good dream or a good story, I think both should be helping us to identify what it is that we like and to be able to like embody and bring it into the world. And we saw that happen with Riley, and it's my hope that the Dream Place meditation is doing that a little bit for our kids, and that I can be offering that out in a couple episodes as well. But yeah, I would just say that the connection here is that the dreams of the dream productions are stories, right? They are symbols. The dreams are these stories that can resource us to be changing the world. That there is, I guess there are a couple other just like connections or just like themes of this show that I just felt were really important. And I think I touched on, but that I just really liked. So I really liked that there was this theme of creativity, and that for Riley, it was, for creativity for her was just like, how do I express myself? What do I want to wear to this dance? And in the dream production world, their creativity was, how do we direct a good dream? But it was, of course, being tainted by capitalism, like we said. But there was still ultimately this theme of, what are we creating?
Okay, so I feel like I have a spicy interjection.
Okay.
About this. You're using the phrase "good dream," And they definitely use that in this series, Dream Productions, where they sort of have a grading system. There's ratings.
Mm-hmm.
Does one come out as a golden orb or not? Was this dream fully resourcing or not? I love the way that you put that at the very beginning of our recording. Like, does the dream resource Riley whether or not she remembers it? And I'm just thinking about my own lived experience with dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering, like, good is a judgment, right?
Yes,
that's true. Is a dream good or bad? And like, I'm trying to think about what it even means to have a quote unquote bad dream, because what is it that my brain would be doing, especially like as an adult, that is not resourcing me? Like, there's part of me that I hear this whole idea of like, was my dream good or not? And it's like, my brain was doing what it needed to do while I was asleep. I feel like every one of my dreams is probably resourcing me in some way. Even if I'm having a dream about a scary thing, maybe there's some thing in my life that I'm afraid of. And like, this is my brain's way of processing it in this liminal space that's like safer for me to look at it than when I'm, in my conscious mind.
Yeah.
So I'm having trouble with the idea of some dreams being good and some dreams not being good in the real world.
I think, yes, I agree about it being like a judgment call. I think maybe I'm kind of interchanging dream and story.
Okay.
So I agree that like, I mean, there are like dreams that are more fun to have. Like we could say that like nightmares are a bad dream because like I didn't enjoy the feeling. However, what they say in the show is that, dreams can either be an escape or they can be a dress rehearsal for your life. And so, and like, I actually think that like they can be both. Like I've been reading a lot of romance books lately. And I think that, like capitalism and patriarchy might want to teach me, might want me to, and I talk about this in my season 2, episode 4, I think, with Burju about Akotar. And then I think I even talk about it a little bit with Marisa about Bad Sisters earlier on the podcast. But like this pressure, this felt sense, this like innate sense of like, or I don't think it's actually innate. I think it is like capitalist and patriarchal conditioning that's like, I'm wasting time, or like that it's like shameful to be reading romance novels. Because it's like so escapist, right? But it's like, but what if it's actually okay to escape? And actually, what if it actually really is a dress rehearsal? What if there's actually, like it can be both, right? Like, what is it that these protagonists in these romance novels, what are they doing, or how are they like reaching towards what they want? How are they advocating for their pleasure? And how can I do that in my life? And so to think that it's either one or the other, I think is binary thinking, which is very characteristic of white supremacy. But so I think it can be both. And I think
I just want to say if us reading the Empyrean series is in any way a dress rehearsal, I'm here for it. I
mean, well, so right. And I think that like, if you just like look hard at a story and just be like, oh, this is just, like Law and Order is just like propaganda, right? It's just like, oh, like the police are always there to help, and it's like, okay, who I think it's Safana on Instagram was posting about like, who, like, is this true? And who benefits from me believing this is, I think, a question that can just help us to like adjust. I don't think that there's even necessarily good stories and bad stories. I think it's like, let's just make sure that we have a really well functioning reality distortion filter that we can like put on and off. That it's like, okay, nobody's wrong for liking any story, like any story that's out there. Even like, I guess if I had to say like, what are stories that I think are quote unquote bad, would be maybe some like superhero type stories where the narrative is always that there's like a single person that can save the day, because it kind of perpetuates this whole like hyper individualism as opposed to like collective resistance, that I think is really where like the answer to a lot of the like predicaments that we're facing in collapse at the end of late stage capitalism. And anyway, like, so, but again, does it make anybody bad for liking those stories? No. If anything, it's like, okay, what is the Riley that we can all unite around that's like worth being our own, like, you know, the protagonist of my own story, the protagonist in my own life. I think what I really loved about this story is, to me, that it encapsulated, if I just think like what is the relationship between Riley and the dream production people? And so, like, to Riley, the dream production people are these competent protectors. They know her. They love her. They would sacrifice themselves for her. Like, they would sacrifice their job. They would do whatever it takes to protect her. And like, what if we have that in the spiritual world? What if we proceeded as though we could like connect with spirit guides like that in a dream place, like meditation? And also, who is Riley to the dream production people? She is like a shared value that the collective can agree upon. So it's like that we need to, you know, like boycott certain brands, perhaps, that we need to, I mean, the problem is like there is no one Riley in the world. There's like too many causes, but it's like, okay, that, you know, like the earth, climate change, you know, like there's so many things that can be a Riley. And I think they're actually all very much connected. So it's like, so long as we're not advocating for one at the expense of something else, and if everybody's just kind of doing their part, and if we just say like, okay, what does it look like for us all to just be reaching towards, you know, to me, Riley is collective liberation. And so it's just like, okay, is this good for collective liberation? And if so, then like, let's do it.
I just want to say kind of my final thing about this Dream Productions show and the movies Inside Out and Inside Out 2 that I think is so cool is, in Inside Out, the whole notion that there are emotions sort of at the control helm, that at any given time, one of them takes the controls. Right? Because that's what Riley needs in that moment, is she actually needs sadness to be in the steering wheel. And so what I think is cool about Dream Productions is it sort of shows that with the directors. Like, which director do I need driving my dream bus, so to speak? Mm-hmm. And I've never thought about it that way in terms of my dreaming mind. And I think it's especially potent when you're thinking about a teenager, an adolescent that's going through like major change. Mm-hmm. But even as an adult, you know, what type of dream do I need to resource me? Like, I have no clue. And I'm just like, it makes me thankful for like whatever directors I have in there that are at the writer's table and figuring out what the script needs to be. There's one scene in Dream Productions where I think it's when Janelle, the assistant director, gets like her first chance, mm-hmm. and it's the dream where Riley comes out of the bed and she's like floating, mm-hmm. and then she sees a reflection of herself, and one of the reflections she's wearing the blue dress that the friend's wearing, and the other one she's wearing the vintage dress that her mom mm-hmm. gave her, and they like touch hands, and there really kind of is no end. It's just like this epic, like floating, seeing myself thing. And it just strikes me as like one of those dreams that's very dreamy. It's very dreamlike. Like only in your dream could you, and how could your conscious mind ever know that like that's what you need? Yet it just happens. It's just like a magical place. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's cool that the idea of there being different directors around in our subconscious mind that are also taking care of what's needed behind the scenes.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed with the trance journeys that I've done, and I will for those people doing a drinking game at home to see how long it takes for me to say the words Carmen Spaniola at this point.
Drink.
But yeah, so in the Numinous Network with Carmen Spaniola, she's a clinical hypnotherapist. So I mean, I probably need to have her on the podcast at some point just to talk about all the different offerings of hypnosis that she does, all the different intentions that she has for it. But I've done many of her different offerings, and in my experience of doing them, there really is like, I really related. I felt seen in that scene where the reality distortion filter is off and it's Riley and she's there with these other, with everybody in the Dream Productions world. And it is kind of this, what do you want? What do you need it to be? A lot of the trance work that I've done with Carmen has been like, it's open-ended cueing on purpose, so that it's just like, it's not you are at a beach, it's you are in, your power place in nature, or what I use with the kids is a beautiful place in nature. And so one of our kids could be envisioning, an ocean, and the other one could be on a mountain. And all I'm doing is just kind of like asking questions of like, are there plants around? Or, like just kind of trying to cue them to, after we've already, like relaxed the body, kind of relaxed the mind. And then now we're ready to kind of go into this altered state of consciousness. But there's still, you're ultimately the one in charge. Whereas to your point, it's like the conscious mind can do these really fun things with just like, oh my gosh, like I guess I needed to feel like I could fly, and so then I just could. And maybe, and yeah, and like in a dream place, certainly, like, I've let the, like I've offered our kids could have like magic wands. Like they'll be like, ooh, I want to have a magic wand where I can, and it's like, cool. Like, yeah. So then I'll like cue that they can have like magical powers. And so certainly like, we can do those things, but to your point, yeah, like it's not a substitute for the fact that there's also like a much more mysterious, magical, emergent thing that happens that we can't control. But that there's just, for me, I mean, I had gone, 30 some years of my life, maybe as a kid, I did this kind of thing. I don't know, where like I hadn't really played into purposefully entering an altered state of consciousness so as to connect with some wise part of me or a spirit guide, or to just like get super relaxed. So I think it's a good time to segue into the dream place part, because the next episode will be more, I'm planning on it being a little bit more of just like what the dream place is going to have, and just considerations. And then the next episode will be the dream place itself. So I would be requesting that nobody listen to the actual dream place meditation without listening to the first one, where I'll just kind of explain what we're doing and why we're doing, and like, don't listen to it while you're driving, that kind of thing. But yeah, I would say for me, when I'm doing a trance journey or a hypnosis or a meditation that is similar to what this dream place is, I mean, it's nice to have an intention. And sometimes the intention can just be, I just want to relax, or I just want to feel into my body. Or for me, it can be sometimes like just connecting with what it is that I want to feel more aligned, connected to myself, connected to the spiritual realm. If I have like a really big decision that I'm weighing between, sometimes it just does feel really nice to tap into it. I know a lot of people will use, tarot or, like kind of other divination techniques. I think those are still a great tool to have in the tool belt, but this has also been one that I have found enjoyable to at least just kind of get into like, what is it that I'm feeling around this question. What I really like about this like dream place this dream place meditation is that it is giving practice in knowing what it is that we want. And like that character Jean, or like every story that I've talked about on the podcast so far, there has been this personified force of capitalism that's trying to tell us what it is that we want, or to be what it is that we should want, and what it is that we should be ashamed of wanting or embarrassed about wanting or whatever. And it's like, no, like in this dream world, it's like what you want matters. Like what you want is important. Let's amplify the things you want. let's just like really get clear on like the things that matter to you. Because I think it's really, Sophie Strand mentioned in her sexy inventory that I think I mentioned in my last podcast episode, that like it's like dangerous if people do not know what it is that they actually want. You're more susceptible to just being swept away by what you're told to want. So for me, I think there is, I struggled with, for a long time, I actually struggled with letting a good thing be a good thing in a dream place, because I would just, I feel a lot of guilt around the privilege and power that I have as like a, like mid upper class, white bodied woman, able-bodied, like all the privileges that I have. And so to then be like in this beautiful place in nature where like I'm creating like the absolute perfect world for myself felt almost like counterintuitive. It's like, but the world is already made for, I need to learn how to, I need to make my life harder, not easier. And like, that's a paradox that like, that I can like lean into, and maybe I need to practice being uncomfortable more in the real world, but then I can resource myself with the comfort that I can find in the spiritual world. I just want to name that, like, that took me probably over at least a year before I could actually get to the point where I can be like, I can hold paradox. I can grapple with both of these things being true, that like, I deserve to have all the teddy bears in the world being my competent protectors. And that doesn't mean that I need to then be comforted in like actual physical space during my waking life when like a tough conversation is happening or whatever. So yeah, again, I think the connection to the dream place is that it is an opportunity to play around with that reality filter. Again, to me, I think what I hope this podcast is doing, at least for myself, is kind of having practice just naming where capitalism, imperialism, white supremacy, patriarchy shows up in stories. And certainly I have, I still have lots of things that I can't see just because of my own positionality, again, as a white-bodied person, as a settler in these systems. But like where I can see it, be like, oh, like this is propaganda trying to get us to believe in this. And I just want to name it so that I can see that like that isn't reality. That is this outside force. That is like this system that wants me to buy into that, like this is how it has to be, or trying to make me feel like cops are there to protect me, let's say, or that like a lot of like in the romance stories, there's very often like the male love interest is super powerful, super rich, super, like these like symbols of like what you would want in a man. But we can just be like, oh, but like those symbols are perhaps capitalistic in their origin, of like, oh, wouldn't we all want to marry the prince, or, like never have to work again or whatever. Like, of course, that's a really powerful symbol, but like, let's just play around with that reality distortion and be like, it isn't actually money we want safeness in capitalism. And the way we get that is through money. But really like the problem is capitalism. Yeah. I think that it's, for me, it's like removing that reality distortion filter is helps me to lean into that I'm not a bad feminist for liking romance novels. It's just capitalist thinking that blames me for my patriarchal conditioning. And then also I think some shame from the imperialist Christianity that also like teaches me that sexual gratification is shameful. And so it's just like, okay, if I can like piece through all of that and be like, but I really like reading these novels right now. There's something really, I'm trying to write one even, it's like, there's something that feels really lovely about being able to be able to tap into what it is that I want. And I think one of the things that has really helped me is intentional altered states of consciousness, for example, with a dream place like meditation. And I think I want to take a moment, since I have you here. You are, aside from our children, I've done the most meditations for our kids, but I've also done a few for you over the months and years. And I guess I'm curious if you want to just share like a little bit about your experience of having done a meditation that I have led you through.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I hope whatever I share is what you want me to share. You use the word intention, which I think played a big factor in the times that you've led a sort of trance meditation type thing for me. I don't recall a time where the context has been, or the intention has been, that I would be falling asleep.
Correct.
Whereas it almost always is with the kids. Like, that's the intention, is you are, whatever it is that you are doing and saying, they are receiving it as being ushered into sleep. And the meditations that you've led for me, that has not been the intention. It's not even been like at that time of day. It's usually been during the afternoon or evening or middle of the day, and the intention has been other things. I think that is a really important piece, is what is it that you're actually trying to do with. There's a book called Active Dreaming by Robert Moss that a friend of mine here lent me, and I read and I found fascinating, and that where you can, like you do with Dream Place, have a sort of framework, a set of steps that you do to possibly influence your dream life and get more meaning from it by writing things down as soon as you wake from your dream, and then giving yourself certain prompts like, how does this relate to my life? How was I feeling in the dream? How do I feel now that I'm out of the dream? And through these reflections, can maybe even connect more to your dream life than if you just weren't really paying any attention to it or not giving it, any energy. So I can't, and part of the formula that he says in that book is you have to have a super juicy intention, like before you do your meditation or go to sleep or whatever. That is like the most important ingredient. And I can't recall exactly, because it was quite a while ago. It's the most recent one of these that you did for me. What we had said, if I was feeling stressed, and it was like more of a, let's just be with that stress and see what happens when you go into more of a trance meditative state. But what I can share is it's really nice. It feels like a little bit of a treat having someone else be at the steering wheel, because when, like, I've done a lot of guided meditations through different apps, and so much so that I now can lead a meditation in a small group setting. I feel like I have enough skill in the area to do that. But my experience is so much different when someone else is being my guide, because there's a letting go. There's a little bit of a letting go, a bit of a freeing sense.
Totally.
When someone else, I am just along for the ride, and I can turn my brain another click off. My conscious thinking monkey mind can just be switched off because I am just a passenger. And I think that allows for maybe a different depth of experience when you're guiding it. And the times that you've guided me in a sort of dream place, I think another important piece of it that's a skill that you apply is that it's open-ended. So yeah, you say a safe place in nature or a powerful place in nature, but I get to pick what that is, like you said, beach, forest, mountain. And I find that those ideas come very quickly and very easily, usually when you are the one that's guiding it. And there's two different specific memories that I'm having. One is you've used the term competent protector at some point in the meditation, and that it can be anything. It can be a person, it can be an animal. And I specifically remember one time having a very vivid visualization of what it meant to me that a competent protector was there, and it was a giant tree like floating in space. So it was like this cosmic tree with like a giant trunk and sort of shadowy eyes and a mouth, but then its head was on fire, and its one like limb for an arm was like ice and water, and then it had like all these vines growing around it, and it was basically like an elemental god. And I remember it even had a name, and his name was Morgan. And I have no idea where that came from or why I needed Morgan in that moment, but I remember that he had a message for me, and the message was something like, you already have all the answers. And I remember feeling a little bit intimidated by this like super powerful figure that like came to me in this meditation, but I also felt relieved. I felt relieved by like, it felt true. It felt like this truth that I had accessed because I was able to receive it from this other entity. And I know I sound like I'm in outer space right now, but that was my experience. And yeah, I mean, shall I continue? Is this what you were looking for?
I mean, I was just curious to know, just like what your experience is. I mean, I would love to hear more. I also think I'm curious because you said that it's nice to be guided. Do you find, how do you feel it is the like kind of the meditations or trances that I've facilitated you through versus like the apps that you've done? Are like about the same, like the same level of letting go, or is it different? Like, and I guess I don't know, it'd be different because I'm actually in person and I can like read your body, whereas like those apps are, and obviously this meditation on the podcast it's going to be me, but it's going to be a recording. It's not live.
Right. I think a lot of the other meditations, guided meditations that I've done, there's lots of different types. A lot of them have been mindfulness meditations.
Right.
A lot of the other ones that I've done have been compassion meditations. Or like loving kindness is another term for them. And so there's sort of different time lengths, anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour long. And again, different intentions of building up mindfulness skills or building up the muscle of sending out loving kindness, compassion to myself and to others in the world. That's the skill that's being built up in those meditations. When you're guiding me and you're physically in the room, I'm not an expert on hypnosis, but I think it's the closest that I've ever felt to being in a state of hypnosis where I'm kind of aware of what's going on, but I'm also like have a bit of like body paralysis.
Totally.
And it's like when I do a guided meditation on an app, most of the ones that I've done have been on either Headspace or the 10% Happier apps. And they're very much in like the mindfulness realm. And it feels like I'm practicing a skill with myself is how it feels. When I listen to you guide me in the dream place, I feel like a passenger being taken on a ride.
Yeah.
So
I think I would agree.
There's a deeper sort of letting go of I'm being whisked away and truly like guided somewhere when you do it.
Yeah. And I think I will also say, and I'll probably say this in the next episode too, that like even just being able to let go and being taken on those rides and building up, like it's like your first meditation is not the same as your 100th meditation.
Definitely. It
your
takes
first
practice.
like my first trance was very different than and even still I would say that like I can have varying degrees of experience in a trance journey. And I'm now getting into what I need to be talking about it more in the next episode, but
okay.
But yeah, was there anything else you wanted to share about your experience? Anything else that
I think we covered it.
But yeah, like sensations, emotions.
I think I'll just say I don't even need to give the whole. I have had other experiences with you that like they stick with me to this day. I can recall them. They were meaningful. They were one of those dreams that changed my life. Like Riley in Dream Productions, where there's those certain pivotal dreams that have a lasting impact.
Yeah, I know of one other one that I don't necessarily. We don't need to necessarily speak to the content of these, but I'm of course now curious if you're saying that it's like changed your life. What did my dream place, or I wasn't branding it as a dream place then. What did my meditation for you resource you for, or how, if it changed your life, in what way did it change your life? What did it make possible for you?
One of my big components of my material in my life is this feeling of not being enough. And the dream trance experience that I had with you helped me feel like maybe I am, or a little bit more proud of my younger self than I had been feeling beforehand.
Yeah, I remember that too, and you feel like it still resources you even to this day.
Yeah, every once in a while, I just come back to the feeling that I had there. They're like, wait, I am a good guy, and I have respected the women in my life, and the dream I had helped me see that.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Yeah, I think it's cool that like it's not a thing we've done a lot, and it's just like anything. I mean, I'm not making any promises. I am just putting my intention is, well, my real intention is to just make good on a promise when, one of our children literally just made the request. I want you to do a dream place for the podcast so that it's there, in the event that I die. So that's why that is actually why we're doing this, but why I think it's okay for other people to do it is that I'm just putting it out there as practice. I forget if I mentioned it already in my previous episode, but that, there are, I forget who quote, I'll see if I can find it, who it is originally quoted as saying this, but it's something like, connection with spirit always happens by accident, but there are things we can do to become accident prone. There are practices we can do to become more accident prone. And to me, having a practice of doing trance or guided meditations like this can just make one a little bit more accident prone to receiving messages from the spiritual realm and whatever that might look like. Or even just like accessing other parts of ourselves or our own self, however you want to look at it. Right. And again, to just remember, to refer to it as imaginary denies its existence, as Zenny would say in Dream Productions. Thank you so much for tuning into the Stoner Story Witch. Thank you to Kevin for coming on the show. Thank you to Carmen Spaniola and the Numinous Network for all that I've learned about altered states of consciousness. And yeah, thank you to all of you for listening in. So coming up on the podcast, my next episode, I'm planning on it being a lot more kind of a technicality, anybody who's interested in actually listening to the meditation, I want to make sure that they tune into my next podcast where I will be talking more about the actual structure of what that meditation is going to be, why I do it, the way that I'm going to do it. That is what is coming up. Thanks again so much for listening. Again, feel free to reach out to at stonerstorywitch@gmail.com or follow me on Substack to let me know what's coming up for you. I want to thank Matt Shuby for the podcast art, my husband Kevin Carlo for all his help in the creation of the theme song for the podcast, and Aeneas Mitchell and John Williams for their inspiration of Hedwig's theme and Hadestown. And now I will leave you with words from my teacher, Rev. Angel Kyoto Williams, who says, "Love and justice are not two. Without interchange, there can be no outer change. And without collective change, no change matters." Take good care.